from me to be someone who brings you down. Hard times in California, it must be hard times all around. From the gold San Francisco Bay to the gray Long Island Sound, it looks like hard times all around. Hard times down in New Orleans led to hard times in his town. For everybody packing up their dreams to beat a flood to higher ground. Hard times in the USA, and it's hard times in Mexico. Politicals play their changing games of you can stay and you must go. It looks like hard times all around. Hard times all around. Hard times all around. Do you just get bitter over time? Do we just get bitter over time? Hard times in the New World Order, meal boil and a quart of wine. Hard times make a futile borderline between yours and mine. It's hard times on a planet blue, Lord sun spinning around in a hard time. Says a headline news like a ship is going down. It looks like hard times all around. Hard times all around. Hard times all around. Hard times all around. Hard times. I never claimed I'd be your one and only. With so much company, do you ever get lonely? I ran into your other boyfriend coming down that staircase. You should have seen the look on my face. But don't paint me as just another jealous lover. You got a weird heat there under your cover. Oh, Polly Ann, can you wait a day between me and all the others? Oh, Polly Ann, can you give me longer than an hour to understand what I thought was mine is ours? Then he leaves. Do you ever get time to miss him? As I'm crawling through bars barbed wire to reach a house of wisdom. And every time I say it's got to be the last time, till I'm strung out and back on your phone line. Polly Ann, can you give me longer than an hour to understand what I thought was mine is ours? All right. Polly Ann, can you give me longer than an hour to understand what I thought was mine is ours? I said, Polly Ann, can't you give me longer than an hour to understand what I thought was mine is ours? I never claimed I was your one and only.
I'm walking through an open meadow of stone, but I can feel the sun like diamonds on my face. They protect me, warn me, shield me from razors and the roses. Still I wait and ask for one more long, sweet taste. Sold out of love, sold out of love again. Vultures cry out mercy in a song that you dread, but your road behind it mirrors your road ahead. Stuck in the mud, standing, weeping in place. and you fooled me twice, and we were fading and leaving.
Grocery store greeter, glad to meet and re-meet you at nearly 95 and working 9 to 5. They say, Juanita, why you come here still? You got enough dough to get you over that hill. You could kick back, baby, and try to relax. When you're old and your eyes are dim, you're gonna shut them and never open them again. So just ride on, like you think it's alright. Ride on, and what I found at the edge of life's cliff, you know I'd rather die than live another what if. Alright. And here she goes. Like I'm never gonna like I'm never gonna like I'm never gonna die. Yeah. We play in a rock and roll band. We make a living with our mouths to our hands, and sometimes they put us on the radio. You know, people say, why you wanna play rock and roll? You'll get $1 to pay a $2 toll. I just ride, I ride on, 'cause I really don't care. I ride on, like there's nothing else there. I ride on, yeah, I think we're all right. Ride on, now do it all right.
Hey, I'm Bill DeVille, and I'm here with Patton, Magee, and Shaun Couture of the Nude Party. Nice to see you, fellas.
Thanks for having us, Bill.
Yeah. So you've been a band for like 11 years now. How did you guys all make it through the pandemic as a band? That really surprised me that a band of 7 people could survive a pandemic and, without being able to play gigs or hardly any. So how did you guys do it? What was the key?
I feel like we don't really know what else to do.
Yeah.
We were stumped, too. Just working other jobs, I was bartending in a brewery. Shaun was like delivering beers for the same brewery. And just kind of picked up side jobs and kept playing until things kind of thawed out. And then by then we had new songs written. We were ready to record and hit the road. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you have a brand new album. Is it your 3rd album now, Rides On?
Yeah, it's the 3rd official album.
Yeah. How did you do things differently this time out?
We did it at home.
Yeah, we have our friend Oakley owns a studio, and we share the space with him up in the Catskills, and it's all our own gear, and we helped build it, and we recorded there for the first time for this record.
And we produced it ourselves.
And
just kind of like owned the space, booked. We brought an engineer up, my friend Matthew Horner from like Southern Florida. Mm-hmm. He actually has not really like engineered a record before, but he has like a lot of cool gear, and we just like have always had like a really good vibe, and he's like recorded himself a lot, so he just came up, set up as engineer, brought all his gear, and we just did like 2-week sessions in the winter. There was one point where all of us, Shaun left for a little bit to do a solo gig down in the city, and the rest of us stayed and recorded. And when he got back, he was like, someone I was with had COVID, and next thing Shaun had COVID, so then half the band had COVID during the session, so half of us kept going and the other half were homesick, but then we all got COVID, so then we all went back in the studio. So we were like, since we all have COVID, we can all just keep recording, spend Christmas together, and it was actually kind of fun.
We celebrated Christmas together. We all had COVID and had a Christmas party.
Yeah, and our other friends were like, can I come? We're like, do you have COVID? And they're like, no. It's like, you can't come.
It's kind of an exclusive COVID party.
So what's it like? You guys were all living together essentially for several years, weren't you?
Yeah, like 6 or 7.
Yeah, about... Well,
we lived together like 10 years.
If you count like the Boone years, yeah, because we started the band in Boone, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm. And that's where you're all from, right? You went to college there in Boone?
We went to college
like
there.
From Austin's from the Appalachians, but we all went to school there.
Yeah, but we started the band there, and we lived together for 5 years there in Boone. And then we moved to the Catskills and lived together for 3 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we've been in incredibly close proximity with each other for a very long time.
I guess you probably know each other's, which buttons not to press and all, and how to get along.
I think there's like especially when you're like a younger man and have a little less wisdom to you. There's like a period where you know where everyone's buttons are and you push them. When you get upset because they push yours, and there's like a back and forth button pushing. But to me, like gratefully, because I don't think this happens in every relationship, but for us, it feels like we've now like mapped out all of each other's buttons and don't push them.
Sure.
Which is a great thing. It's just better. I kind of honestly, I feel like the band is like
I don't want to say peak, but this is like, it's the best that we've ever been playing. It's the best our relationships have ever been. And it's like 10 years in, like.
It's your best album.
And it's our best.
think.
I feel like it's our best album. All in all, I just feel like very much like on an upward trajectory.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you guys met in college, I read someplace that a lot of you didn't play instruments. How do you figure out who's going to play what?
You did.
Well, yeah, I've been playing in bands since I was pretty young, and but when we got together, we kind of knew we were going to live together first, and then we decided that we wanted to be in a band. And I mean, it was kind of pretty natural. Like Alec wanted to play bass, Connor wanted to play drums, Patton played guitar,
but I mostly just wanted to write songs and sing. When I went to high school in Utah, and then like moved to North Carolina for college, I didn't know anybody at all. I met all these guys at school. I didn't know anyone in the whole state. But my only mentality going to college was, I just want to. I kept watching that Doors documentary, When You're Strange, the one narrated by Johnny Depp, and I just was like, in my mind, I was like, you know, you just go there, you'll be around people, and you'll start a band. And I couldn't sing at all, but I knew I just wanted to sing and write songs and be in a band.
Mm-hmm. So you've opened for artists like Jack White and the Arctic Monkeys. I saw you with Orville Peck last summer at First Avenue, and you've done a lot of different gigs. What's the most memorable show you played in your 11 years as the Nude Party?
My most memorable, and I was talking to someone about this last night, was when we played Bonnaroo.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing.
We played Bonnaroo, and the Super Jam went on before us.
And they closed with Wagon Wheel.
Yeah, Old Crow Medicine Show
like
walks out.
Hit at the time.
They play Wagon Wheel,
right.
And whilst I'm backstage pacing,
like peering through the
like
curtain,
sweating,
like, doing Wagon Wheel.
like how are we gonna follow Wagon Wheel in Tennessee, right? But the crowd loved us, and Bonnaroo is like, it's a very good vibe, and everyone is having a good time, and it was, they just were very receptive, and I just remember walking off stage after that, just literally like shaking. It was amazing.
And like I think it was summer 2013 or 2014. Like it was like we got to know each other a lot because we went to Bonnaroo together as volunteers. We couldn't afford tickets. We just went as volunteers and did like all of our volunteer shifts. And like camped out, and that was like how I definitely got like closer to you and Shaun in the first place. And I remember specifically.
I am Shaun.
Or you and Don, I meant to say. But just like being there and like watching Jack White on the main stage, all of us just standing there, just kind of like frying, like just like amazed, like totally in awe, and we were like just starting the band. We didn't really have anything going yet. We were just kind of starting to play together, and just to kind of like to go from like that place of just like in a sea of people looking up at Jack White and being like, this is insane. He did like 4 encores, and then a few years later you'd like playing at Bonnaroo like on the stage was kind of unbelievable, and then like opening for Jack White was like, it was honestly kind of emotional.
I can imagine.
Just a big
it must
big
be pretty
change.
cool to know that Jack kind of likes your music.
Yeah, I think he does.
Yeah, and I saw you in the Blue Room in Nashville, Jack's place there, and that was a super cool show during Americana Fest. And it's like, I remember it was a super long day, and you guys went on stage. It must have been 1:00 in the morning, maybe even a little later, and it was just amazing. I want to thank you for that.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Thanks for coming.
It was a great set. And another show I want to mention. It was New Year's Eve, right in the height of the pandemic, and you guys played at a little club in New York, in Brooklyn, I believe it was, and it was live streamed.
Yeah, we live streamed from the Sultan Room.
Yeah, and it was amazing. It was fun. It was, we couldn't really go out that year. It wasn't feeling very public, so sat at home, pulled you up on the big screen on the TV, and turned it up real loud. But that was a great, fun little New Year's Eve. I
that
thought.
was fun. That was cool. It was like the best we could do at the time.
Yeah. It was, obviously we were there alone with our 2 friends filming.
Yeah.
So we all, we got in our show clothes, and it was like,
yeah, we should have used a clap track or something.
It was like
something. Like,
we like went into the green room. We're like, okay, guys, like showtime. When no one was there.
I'm nervous.
Mm-hmm.
What if no one comes?
Yeah. One thing I notice about your music, and I'm such a fan of all three of your albums, is I hear certain things like the Velvet Underground and the Rolling Stones, and well, Dr. John too. In fact, you covered Dr. John on your new album. What is it about music that's from the latter part of the '60s through the middle part of the '70s that you guys, why you gravitate towards that a little bit musically?
I don't feel like it's not like you have a reason for a feeling. You know what I mean? You just like have a feeling and a reaction to something, and you can add a reason on top of it, but it's just a natural thing, just like it just hits. Just hits.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say a big thing for me about music from that era is just the production of it, because a lot of it was done in one room live to tape. So they're kind of like little events, like moments captured in time that are like, I don't know. It's just like something about capturing lightning in a bottle. And you can, in a Dr. John song or like a Neil Young track, like you can just feel that.
And
not to say that doesn't happen now, but
probably the players of that time were better.
Probably.
Because they were just like, they had more than 10,000 hours. Like they were all so busy, like collaborating with each other, playing constantly, like always like having like after show jams and stuff. I think probably the players of that time were all in all better.
Yeah. Tell me about the song "Rides On," the first single from the recent album.
Shaun had written like a chord pattern that was like it was like the one we ended up with, but it had like other parts too, just kind of like a number of pieces on it, and he sent it to me, and like he had mentioned that he had some idea sort of about Mexico, so I kind of had like that. I was like listening to what he sent me, the recording he sent me, and kind of thinking about just like the word Mexico, and then we kind of like it's like, I kind of got an idea, like kind of like chorus and stuff, and so then we like took the parts and we like mishmashed them and like elongated certain things and like kind of like wrote it out. And it just that one just kind of came into place like kind of easily, and it felt very much to me, and I think to all of us, is sort of like kind of like an anthem for the
band.
album, for how we feel right now, where we're at.
Are the characters in the song real?
Yeah, oddly enough, yeah.
Then it seems like it's almost like a maybe sort of a sequel to the song Chevy Van.
It feels that way to me, kind of too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is it just a coincidence that it played out that way?
Well, it's
It is kind of a coincidence that we were on the same wavelength as far as like what the song might be about in a way. Like you wrote the lyrics, and it just so happened to be on the same same vein.
You had mentioned something about Mexico, so I kind of had like that rattling.
Yeah.
And then like I was with my ex-girlfriend, like visited her, or ex-girlfriend at the time, whatever, however you say that. But we were visiting her grandpa in Ohio, and he was like going through chemo, so he was like super emotional. People going through chemo tend to be, and I was sitting with him in the kitchen. He was showing me all these old photographs, and he had this one of like him with this like matador down in like, and he was like, I remember he said to me, and I thought it was the funniest sentence. I wrote it down. He said, "If you ever find yourself down in Acapulco, look for the Elephant Cliffs. I've got a friend down there named Alfredo. He's a matador." And I was like, and it was just such a funny sequence of words that I wrote it down and then kind of forgot about it until like maybe a year later when that song was coming out. That kind of like was digging through some notes, and like that came up. I was like,
So I got the memo, by the way, about jean.
I see that.
Yeah, jean shirts and jackets.
You did. Looking good.
So, how did you adorn those yourselves? Your jean jackets?
We designed them.
Yeah.
I have a friend up in the Catskills. Her name's Lena, and she goes by Pumpkin Seed Chain Stitch. That's her Instagram or her business. And but she's the one who did all of these for us, and mine has a train on the back.
Lovely, with the album title.
Yeah, mine's not as fancy as the rest of them yet, but yeah, we all came up with that concept of the jackets and the pants, and then told her, and she did her own rendition of it.
Yeah. Here's a question for you: is the band a democracy?
Yeah, I think what it's become is like a democracy with like specialization.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'll always write the set lists, but like Connor and Alec and Bros will always kind of do like social media stuff, and like Connor will always do like merch. So there's always like I got we get on this tour, and I'm like hanging out after the show and seeing people's shirts, and I'm like, oh, I've never seen that design. Never seen, you know what I mean? Like I think it's gotten specialized in a way where everybody like leans into their expertise, and not everyone's hands need to be in every piece of everything.
Right. Well, it's been really nice to chat with you, and I can't wait to see you again.
Yeah, thanks for having us,
It's
Bill.
the Nude Party, and that's Patton Magee and Shaun Couture. Thanks so much for coming by, gents.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Bill.
Our pleasure.
The Current is public media made possible thanks to member support.